You clicked on this video because something in that title spoke to you. Maybe you've been managing your blood sugar for years. Maybe you were just diagnosed and you're still trying to make sense of what your doctor told you. Or maybe you're someone who simply refuses to accept that the rest of your life has to be defined by a number on a glucometer. Whatever brought you here, I want you to know you're in the right place. And what I'm about to share with you might genuinely change how you think about food, blood sugar, and your own body. We're talking about nuts today, 3 specific ones. And before you think, oh, I already know nuts are healthy, I promise you this is not that video. What we're going to cover goes much deeper than a grocery list. We're going to look at why these 3 foods work at a biological level, what they do inside your cells, how they interact with insulin, and exactly how and when you should be eating them to get the maximum benefit. I've spent a considerable amount of time synthesizing research from endocrinology journals, clinical nutrition trials, and metabolic medicine to bring you something genuinely actionable today. But I also want to open with something that might stick with you until the very end of this video. Here it is. The nutrient that may matter more than any drug for insulin function is not something your doctor prescribes. It's something most Americans over 60 are chronically deficient in, and it's hiding inside all 3 of the nuts we'll discuss today. We'll get to exactly what that is, but I want you to hold on to that thought as we go, because by the end, it's going to reframe everything. I've put together this content after going through hundreds of pages of peer-reviewed research, clinical trial data, and meta-analyses, not to overwhelm you, but to filter out the noise and give you only what actually matters for someone in your position. This is what I do for our community here, and I take that responsibility seriously. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from, around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Now let's start by dismantling something. For decades, and I mean decades, people living with diabetes or pre-diabetes were told to avoid nuts. The reasoning seemed logical on the surface. Nuts are high in fat. Fat has a lot of calories. Calories raise blood sugar, so nuts must be dangerous. Doctors repeated it. Nutritionists repeated it. It got printed in pamphlets and handouts and told to millions of people sitting in waiting rooms, and it was wrong. Not sort of wrong. Fundamentally, mechanistically wrong, in a way that caused real harm to real people. Here's what was missing from that advice. Not all fat behaves the same way in the body, and fat eaten alongside carbohydrates does something that no medication on a pharmacy shelf can fully replicate. It slows the entire process of glucose absorption. Think of it like this. When you eat a meal that's primarily carbohydrates with no fat, no protein, and no fiber, glucose rushes into your bloodstream like water through a broken dam. Your pancreas scrambles to produce enough insulin to handle the surge, and if your insulin response is already impaired, which it is in type 2 diabetes, that surge becomes a dangerous spike. Your blood sugar skyrockets, your body reacts with inflammation, your blood vessels take damage, and your A1C inches upward. But when you eat fat, protein, and fiber, alongside those carbohydrates, something different happens. The fat physically slows gastric emptying, the rate at which food moves from your stomach into your small intestine. The fiber absorbs water and forms a kind of gel matrix in your gut, further slowing glucose absorption. The protein triggers its own hormonal signals that moderate the insulin response. And the end result is that glucose enters your bloodstream gradually, steadily, in a way that your body can actually manage. That's what nutritionists now call a metabolic buffer. And nuts, it turns out, are one of the most powerful metabolic buffers that exist in the entire food supply. Let's talk about the first nut, and by almost every measure, the most studied nut in the context of diabetes, the almond. Almonds have been the subject of more controlled clinical trials for glycemic management than any other nut, and the findings are consistent enough to be genuinely remarkable. A landmark study published in the journal Metabolism found that when participants with type 2 diabetes consumed almonds before a meal, specifically about 23 almonds, which is roughly 1 ounce, their post-meal blood glucose spike was significantly lower than when they ate the same meal without almonds. And we're not talking about a marginal difference. We're talking about a meaningful reduction in the area under the glucose curve, which is the measurement that actually predicts long-term vascular damage. Why does this happen at a cellular level? Almonds contain 3 things that work in concert: monounsaturated fatty acids, which slow gastric emptying as we discussed; dietary fiber, both soluble and insoluble, which traps glucose molecules in the intestine and releases them slowly; and magnesium, which is where things get particularly important. Magnesium is not a minor player in blood sugar metabolism. It is central to it. Every cell in your body requires magnesium to allow insulin to bind to its receptor and trigger glucose uptake. Think of insulin as a key and the insulin receptor as a lock. Magnesium is what keeps the lock mechanism working properly. Without adequate magnesium, the key doesn't turn. Insulin is present, but it can't do its job. This is called insulin resistance, and it is the core dysfunction in type 2 diabetes. Now here's what makes this so significant. Research published in Diabetes Care found that approximately 50% of people with type 2 diabetes are deficient in magnesium. Half. And most of them have no idea, because standard blood panels typically don't test intracellular magnesium levels. They test serum magnesium, which can appear normal, even when cells are starving for it. A single ounce of almonds provides roughly 76 milligrams of magnesium. The daily recommended intake for adults over 50 is around 320 to 420 milligrams. So a daily handful of almonds gets you nearly 20% of the way there, in a form that is naturally packaged with the healthy fats and fiber that help your body absorb and utilize it effectively. There's also vitamin E to consider. Almonds are one of the richest natural sources of alpha-tocopherol, the most biologically active form of vitamin E. For someone with diabetes, this matters enormously. High blood sugar generates what scientists call reactive oxygen species. Essentially, molecular fragments that damage cells, inflame blood vessels, oxidize LDL cholesterol, and accelerate the complications of diabetes, including neuropathy, retinopathy, and nephropathy. Vitamin E is a potent antioxidant that intercepts these reactive molecules before they can cause damage. It's one of the reasons that people who eat almonds regularly show better markers of vascular health and lower rates of diabetic nerve damage in population studies. The timing recommendation for almonds is specific and evidence-based, about 15 to 20 minutes before your main meals. This gives the fat and fiber time to begin the process of slowing gastric emptying before the carbohydrates in your meal even arrive. Consider keeping a small, pre-portioned bag of 23 almonds. That's your therapeutic dose, somewhere easily accessible. At your desk, in your car, on the kitchen counter. Make it the easiest choice, not the hardest one. Now let's move to the second nut, and this one is particularly close to my heart because of what it does for organs beyond just blood sugar control: walnuts. Walnuts are biologically unique among tree nuts for one simple reason. They are the only nut with a significant amount of alpha-linolenic acid, which is the plant-based precursor to the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids that your body uses to protect your heart, your kidneys, and your brain. For someone managing diabetes over 60, this is not a peripheral benefit. It is central to survival and quality of life. Let me explain why omega-3 fatty acids matter so much in the context of diabetes. Chronic high blood sugar is not just a glucose problem. It is an inflammatory problem. Every episode of hyperglycemia triggers a cascade of inflammatory signals throughout your body. Your endothelium, the thin layer of cells lining your blood vessels, becomes inflamed and stiff. Your kidneys, which filter your blood dozens of times per day, begin to accumulate damage in their smallest filtering units, the glomeruli, and your brain, which is particularly vulnerable to vascular damage, begins to show the early signs of what researchers now call diabetic encephalopathy, a subtle but progressive deterioration in cognitive function that affects memory and executive function. Omega-3 fatty acids, and particularly the ALA found abundantly in walnuts, counteract this inflammatory cascade at a molecular level. They compete with the omega-6 fatty acids that are dominant in the modern American diet and that drive inflammation. By shifting the balance in your cell membranes toward omega-3 fatty acids, you change the biological signals your cells send to each other. You produce fewer pro-inflammatory compounds and more anti-inflammatory ones. The result, over time, is lower systemic inflammation, better blood vessel flexibility, reduced oxidative stress in the kidneys, and this is the one that genuinely excites researchers: meaningful protection against the cognitive decline that disproportionately affects people with poorly controlled diabetes. A study published in Diabetes/Metabolism Research and Reviews found that regular walnut consumption was associated with significantly better fasting blood glucose levels and improved insulin sensitivity. The proposed mechanism involves not just the omega-3 fatty acids, but also the unique polyphenol compounds found in walnut skins, those thin, slightly bitter brown membranes that many people peel off. Don't peel them. Those polyphenols are part of what makes walnuts so powerful. The recommended dose is around 14 walnut halves per day. That's approximately 1 ounce, which provides about 2.5 grams of ALA. Unlike almonds, which are best used as a pre-meal buffer, walnuts work well as a mid-morning or mid-afternoon snack, eaten on their own or paired with a small amount of cheese or plain Greek yogurt. This stabilizes blood sugar between meals, prevents the dip in glucose that leads to overeating at your next meal, and delivers a sustained stream of anti-inflammatory compounds throughout the day. One more thing about walnuts and the brain. A large observational study from UCLA found that adults who consumed walnuts regularly scored significantly higher on cognitive tests measuring memory and concentration. In a population that is already at elevated risk for dementia, diabetes roughly doubles the risk of Alzheimer's disease. This kind of protection is not just a nice bonus, it is a genuine priority. And now the third nut, and perhaps the most underrated of the three, pistachios. Pistachios have a nutritional profile that is genuinely different from other nuts, and understanding why requires looking at their macronutrient composition more carefully. While almonds and walnuts are primarily valued for their fat content and its metabolic effects, pistachios stand out because of their unusually high protein content relative to their caloric load. Among all tree nuts, pistachios have one of the best protein-to-calorie ratios. And protein, as we discussed earlier, plays its own independent role in moderating the glycemic response by triggering the release of hormones like GLP-1, the same hormonal pathway that some of the most popular new diabetes medications target. But beyond protein, pistachios contain a particular combination of antioxidants that includes lutein, zeaxanthin, and gamma-tocopherol that are relatively rare in other nuts. These compounds specifically target oxidative stress in the retinal blood vessels, which is particularly relevant because diabetic retinopathy, the damage to the blood vessels in the eyes, is one of the most common and most feared complications of long-term diabetes. A clinical trial published in the Review of Diabetic Studies found that participants who consumed about 49 pistachios per day, again, roughly 1 ounce for 12 weeks, showed significant improvements in fasting blood glucose, insulin levels, and the ratio of good to bad cholesterol. But what made the results particularly striking was the improvement in hemoglobin A1C, the 3-month average blood sugar measurement that is the gold standard marker of long-term glycemic control. A reduction in A1C of even 0.5 percentage point is clinically significant. Sustained pistachio consumption achieved that. There is also a behavioral element to pistachios that deserves mention, because managing diabetes is not only a biochemical challenge, it's a behavioral one. Pistachios are typically sold in shell, and the act of shelling them manually serves as a powerful eating moderator. It slows you down. It increases your awareness of how much you're consuming. Research on what's called the Pistachio Principle found that people who ate in-shell pistachios consumed significantly fewer calories than those who ate pre-shelled pistachios, without feeling any less satisfied. For someone managing weight alongside blood sugar, and the two are deeply interconnected, this is a meaningful practical advantage. The recommended dose for pistachios is around 49 nuts per day, which is that same 1-ounce serving. Like walnuts, they work well as a between-meal snack, but they also perform well when added to a meal, stirred into oatmeal, sprinkled over a salad, or eaten alongside eggs in the morning. Their slightly sweet, savory flavor makes them highly palatable, which matters enormously for long-term compliance. The best dietary intervention is the one you'll actually stick to. Now let's come back to the question I opened with. The nutrient hiding in all three of these nuts that may matter more than any drug for insulin function. It's magnesium. And here is why this deserves its own moment of emphasis. The research is now robust enough that several prominent endocrinologists have begun calling magnesium deficiency a silent amplifier of insulin resistance. A 2021 meta-analysis of 18 randomized, controlled trials found that magnesium supplementation significantly reduced fasting blood glucose and improved insulin sensitivity in people with type 2 diabetes. The effect was strongest in people who were deficient at baseline, which, as we noted, is roughly half of all diabetic patients. The difference between getting magnesium through food versus supplements is significant. Food sources deliver magnesium in a matrix of cofactors, other minerals, healthy fats, fiber, polyphenols that enhance absorption and utilization. Isolated supplements, while useful in cases of severe deficiency, don't replicate the full biological effect of food-based magnesium. This is one of the most compelling arguments for making these three nuts a daily habit rather than simply adding a magnesium pill to your morning routine. Now, let's talk about the practical architecture of making this work in your actual life. Because information without implementation is just noise. The single most important thing you can do is pre-portion. On Sunday evening, or whatever day you use to organize your week, take 3 small bags or containers. Fill one with 23 almonds. Fill another with 14 walnut halves. Fill the third with 49 pistachios. Do this for each day of the week. That's your entire week of therapeutic nut consumption, organized in about 10 minutes. When your snacks are pre-portioned, you remove the friction of measuring, the temptation to grab more than you should, and the excuse of not having anything healthy ready. For quality, choose raw or dry roasted nuts only. Avoid anything that says honey roasted, salted, or that lists oil as a separate added ingredient. High heat processing with added oils oxidizes the delicate fats in nuts, which not only reduces their beneficial effects, but can actually introduce pro-inflammatory compounds. Raw or dry roasted means the fats are intact, the antioxidants are preserved, and you're getting the full therapeutic value. For storage, nuts are high in unsaturated fats, which means they can go rancid if left in warm or humid conditions. Keep your supply in a cool, dry place, and if you buy in bulk, store the excess in the refrigerator. Rancid nuts don't just taste bad, their oxidized fats can work against your metabolic health rather than for it. Trust your nose. If a nut smells off, it is off. For the 30-day challenge, I want to invite you to try something specific. Choose just one of these 3 nuts, whichever appeals most to you, whichever is easiest to find at your local store, and commit to including it in your daily routine for 30 days, 1 ounce per day, consistently. If you have a glucometer, check your fasting blood sugar each morning and your post-meal blood sugar at the 1 hour and 2 hour marks after your largest meal. Keep a simple log. What you'll likely notice, if the research holds true in your individual case, is a gradual but measurable downward trend in those numbers over the course of the month. Some people see changes in the first week. For others, it takes 3 to 4 weeks for the cumulative effects to become visible. But the biology is consistent enough to be confident in what it predicts. When you complete that 30-day experiment, or even if you start it, I'd love to hear from you. Drop it in the comments. Tell me which nut you chose, what you noticed, what surprised you. Those comments are not just valuable to me, they're valuable to every other person in this community who is navigating the same challenges you are. And here is the broader truth that I want to leave you with. Managing blood sugar is not a single intervention. It's not one drug, one food, one habit. It is a system of small, consistent, biologically intelligent choices that accumulate into genuinely different outcomes over months and years. Nuts are one piece of that system, but they're a piece that is accessible, affordable, delicious, and backed by a body of evidence that is, at this point, impossible to dismiss. You are not powerless in this. The choices you make at every meal, every snack, every grocery run, they are not trivial. They are the sum total of your health trajectory. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time. And leave a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one, and it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar? Most people find out way too late, and by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called the Glucose Paradox, and inside you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free. You can download it in a second, and it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.